anxieties are caused by external conditions, by things happening out there in the world. This is the grand illusion that has kept humanity in bondage for countless generations. I tell you with absolute certainty that nothing outside of you causes your fear. Nothing in the world has the power to make you anxious. These states arise entirely from within, from the stories you tell yourself, from the assumptions you hold about your life. And if these states arise from within, then within is where they must be conquered. The first principle you must understand is this: your consciousness, your awareness, your I am is the only reality. Everything else, every person, object, and condition in your life is simply consciousness made visible. The world you experience is not causing your state of mind. Your state of mind is causing the world you experience. This is the foundation upon which we will build our freedom from fear and anxiety. You see, most people have it exactly backward. They believe that if their circumstances would change, then they could feel peace. If they had more money, they would not fear poverty. If they had perfect health, they would not fear illness. If everyone approved of them, they would not fear rejection. They place the solution outside themselves. And in doing so, they surrender their power to the very things they fear. But the truth, the absolute law of your being, is that the world is a mirror, faithfully reflecting your consciousness back to you. Change your consciousness first, and the reflection must change. This is not positive thinking or wishful fantasy. This is the creative law upon which all reality is based. When I tell you that your mind can heal itself, I am revealing the most practical secret in all of creation. The mind that created the fear is the only mind that can uncreate it. The consciousness that assumed anxiety to be your portion is the only consciousness that can assume a new state of peace. How do we accomplish this transformation? Not through struggle, not through willpower, not through endless analysis of our problems. These approaches keep us locked in the consciousness of the problem. We form by using the divine gift of imagination to experience ourselves as already free, already whole, already at peace. Your imagination is not a fantasy-making faculty given to entertain you during idle moments. It is nothing less than the creative power of God operating in you. When you use your imagination consciously, you are using the very power that creates and sustains universes. And this power can be directed to transform any condition in your life, including the conditions of fear and anxiety. Let me give you a simple example of how this works. If you are anxious about a future event, perhaps a medical diagnosis, a financial challenge, or a difficult conversation, your natural tendency is to imagine the worst. You see yourself receiving terrible news, losing everything, or being rejected. And as you dwell in this imaginal state, your body responds with all the physiological reactions of fear: increased heart rate, shallow breathing, muscle tension. Your entire being acts as if the dreaded event is happening right now, though it exists only in your imagination. Now, what if you were to use this same imagined power differently? What if, instead of imagining the worst, you were to imagine the ideal outcome, not as a technique of self-deception, but as an exercise of your divine creative power? What if you were to feel yourself into the state of having already received the good news, having already resolved the financial issue, having already completed the conversation with perfect understanding on both sides? I tell you, when you do this with feeling, with the emotion of relief and gratitude that were yours if the desired state were already accomplished, you set in motion the creative forces that will externalize that state in your world. This is not magic or superstition. This is the precise operation of consciousness, which is the only creative power there is. Consider the words attributed to Jesus in the Gospel of Mark. Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. This is not speaking of a future condition or a distant hope. It is telling you to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, to enter the state of consciousness where your desire is already accomplished. From that state, and only from that state, will the outer conditions rearrange themselves to match your inner assumption. Many of you have tried various techniques to overcome fear and anxiety. Perhaps you've practiced deep breathing, positive affirmations, or sought professional therapy. These approaches can be helpful steps along the way, but they do not address the fundamental cause of all fear and anxiety, the belief in a power outside of your own consciousness. As long as you believe that something external can harm you, control you, or determine your emotional state, you will remain vulnerable to fear and anxiety. But once you realize that the only creative power in your universe is your own wonderful human imagination, you will have discovered the secret to perfect freedom. You might ask, but what about real dangers in the world? Aren't some fears legitimate? Let me address this directly. Of course, there are conditions in the physical world that could harm the body. There are financial challenges, relationship difficulties, health concerns, and countless other situations that might seem worthy of fear. I am not suggesting that you deny these conditions exist on the level of physical reality. But I am telling you that these conditions have no power to create fear or anxiety within you unless you grant them that power through your own imaginative acts. The decision to fear or not to fear is always yours, regardless of outer circumstances. And more importantly, the creative power to transform those circumstances is also yours through the conscious use of your imagination. When you truly understand that your fear does not protect you, that in fact it attracts the very conditions you fear by keeping them alive in your consciousness, you will be ready to relinquish it. And when you understand that imagining the solution with feeling is infinitely more effective than analyzing the problem, you will have the key to transforming any situation in your life. Let me share with you a profound truth that has been taught by mystics throughout the ages. There is no outside. The entire vast universe that seems to surround you is contained within your consciousness. You are not a tiny being in a vast world. You are a vast consciousness in which the entire world exists. Nothing is outside of you because there is no outside to consciousness. And you are consciousness. You are the I am, the eternal awareness in which all experiences arise. From this understanding, fear and anxiety become not just unnecessary but impossible. How can you fear what is within you? What is subject to your creative command? How can you be anxious about conditions that are simply manifestations of your own states of consciousness? The practice I am giving you tonight is not a technique of self-improvement. It is the awakening to your true nature as the operant power in your universe. When you embody this truth, fear and anxiety dissolve, not because you have conquered them, but because you have awakened from the dream in which they seemed real. Now, let me give you a practical approach to applying this wisdom in your daily life. When you find yourself experiencing fear or anxiety, do not fight against these states or condemn yourself for experiencing them. Instead, simply observe them without judgment, recognizing that they are temporary states of consciousness, not your true identity. Then quietly and without effort, turn your attention to the state you wish to embody instead. If you are anxious about your health, feel yourself into the state of vibrant well-being. If you are fearful about your finances, feel the relief and security of abundant resources. If you are worried about a relationship, feel the joy of perfect understanding and harmony. The key is to enter these states completely in your imagination, to experience them with all the sensory vividness you can muster. See through the eyes of the person who has already attained what you desire. Hear the conversations you would hear. Feel the emotions you would feel. Make it as real in your consciousness as the room in which you are now sitting. And here is the crucial point. Do not see this as a technique to get something in the future. See it as stepping into the truth that transcends time. The state you are imagining is not something to be attained. It is something to be accepted as the present reality of your being. You are not creating something new. You are awakening to what has always been true beneath the surface appearances. Many people fail in their attempts to apply these principles because they approach them with the consciousness of effort and struggle. They try to force their way into a new state of being. But freedom from fear and anxiety cannot be achieved through force. It can only be accepted through surrender to your true nature. Surrender does not mean giving up or resigning yourself to unwanted conditions. It means surrendering the false self, the anxious, fearful personality that you have mistaken for your identity. It means falling back into the infinite peace of your true self, the I am that has never been touched by fear or limitation of any kind. Think of it this way. If you were dreaming at night and found yourself in a frightening situation, there would be two ways to escape the fear. You could try to solve the problem within the dream, struggling against dream enemies and obstacles. Or you could simply wake up, instantly transcending the entire dream situation. The practice I am giving you is the art of waking up from the dream of fear and anxiety rather than struggling against them on their own level. This awakening is not a one-time event, but a continuous process of remembering your true nature. Each time you catch yourself in a state of fear or anxiety, it is an opportunity to practice this remembrance, to shift your identification from the limited personality to the infinite I am. I want to address another question that might arise in your mind. If my consciousness creates my reality, does that mean I am to blame for my problems? This question comes from the limited perspective of the personality, with its tendency to judge and condemn. From the perspective of your true self, there is no blame, only the neutral operation of creative law. You have been creating your life experiences through your states of consciousness, but you have been doing so unconsciously, unaware of your creative power. Now you are becoming conscious of this process, and with consciousness comes choice. You are not to blame for having created unconsciously in the past, but you are responsible for creating consciously from this moment forward. Responsibility in this context does not mean burden or guilt. It means the wonderful discovery that you have the ability to respond creatively to life, rather than react fearfully to it. It is the recognition of your power, not your culpability. Now, some of you might wonder how this understanding applies to collective fears and anxieties, to conditions that seem to affect entire communities or nations. If consciousness is individual, how do we account for shared experiences of fear? The answer lies in understanding that while consciousness is individual, it is not isolated. We are all individualized expressions of the one universal consciousness. When many individuals share similar assumptions and imaginal acts, they create collective experiences. The mass fear you see in the world is the outpicturing of millions of individual minds, imagining similar scenarios and emotionalizing similar beliefs. But here is where your power becomes truly revolutionary. You do not need to change the consciousness of millions to transform your experience. You only need to change your own. When you refuse to participate in collective fear, when you maintain your state of peace and wholeness regardless of appearances, you become a light in the darkness, a demonstration of what is possible for all. Moreover, because consciousness is fundamental and interconnected, your shift in awareness creates ripples that extend far beyond your individual experience. By maintaining a consciousness of peace in a world of turmoil, you contribute more to the healing of that world than any amount of outer activity done from a state of fear. This is what all the great spiritual teachers have meant when they spoke of being in the world but not of it. You acknowledge the appearances that surround you, but you do not grant them the power to determine your state of being. Instead, you know yourself as the power that can transform those appearances through the conscious use of your imagination. Let me emphasize again that this is not about denying or avoiding the challenges of human existence. It is about facing them from a completely different level of consciousness. From the state of fear, problems appear insurmountable. From the state of your divine self, they become opportunities for creative expression. Think of a master artist facing a blank canvas. Does the artist fear the emptiness before them? No, they are excited by the opportunity to express what is within them. Life is offering you the same opportunity at every moment to express the infinite potential that is your true nature, rather than react with fear to external conditions. The secret to living without fear and anxiety forever is to know yourself as the creator rather than the creation, the dreamer rather than the dream. From this knowing, you relate to life's challenges not as threats, but as the raw material for your creative expression. Your mind can get itself, because your mind is not broken. What appears as fear and anxiety are simply misunderstandings about your true nature and the nature of reality. When these misunderstandings are corrected, healing happens spontaneously, not as something you achieve, but as the natural expression of what you are. You might wonder how long this healing process takes. The answer is that it takes no time at all, and also the rest of your life. The shift in consciousness that dispels fear can happen in an instant. The moment you truly recognize yourself as the divine I am, rather than the limited personality. Yet the expression of this truth through all the conditions of your life is an ongoing unfoldment, a continuous adventure of creative self-discovery. Some of you may have tried to apply spiritual principles in the past without experiencing the results you desire. If this is the case for you, consider whether you are approaching these teachings as techniques to get something, rather than revelations of what you already are. The difference is subtle but crucial. When you approach the truth of your being as something to be attained in the future, you affirm its absence in the present. This creates an endless cycle of seeking but never finding, because what you are seeking is what is seeking. When instead you approach these principles as confirmations of your true nature, already perfect and complete, you allow that perfection to express itself naturally through the conditions of your life. The mind cannot heal itself through its own efforts because effort implies the very division the healing seeks to overcome. The mind heals when it surrenders to the wholeness that it already is, beneath the surface appearance of division and conflict. This surrender is not passive resignation, but active acceptance. It is the conscious decision to identify with the solution rather than the problem, with wholeness rather than fragmentation, with peace rather than turmoil. And this decision is made not once, but moment by moment as you navigate the changing conditions of your life. Each time you catch yourself in a state of fear or anxiety, simply observe. I am temporarily identified with a limited state of consciousness. Now I choose to remember who I truly am. Then feel yourself expanding beyond the limited state, embracing the freedom and peace that are your birthright. Over time, you will notice that the intervals between episodes of fear become longer, and the intensity and duration of the episodes themselves diminish. This happens not because you are becoming better at controlling fear, but because you are becoming more established in the consciousness that transcends fear altogether. Remember that fear and anxiety always project themselves into time. They are concerned with what might happen in the future, or with the consequences of what happened in the past. They cannot exist in the eternal now, which is where your true self resides. By bringing your awareness fully into the present moment, you step out of the stream of time where fear and anxiety operate. This present moment awareness is not a technique, but your natural state of being. It is what you are beneath the constant movement of thought. When you rest in this awareness, you discover that there is nothing to fear, because there is no separate self to be threatened. There is only the one indivisible consciousness expressing itself as all that is. From this understanding, the solution to fear and anxiety is not to acquire something you lack, but to let go of something that was never truly yours. The identification with a separate, vulnerable self that exists in time. This letting go is not achieved through effort or willpower, but through recognition of what has always been true. The mind heals itself when it recognizes its own wholeness. This recognition is not intellectual but experiential. It comes in moments of complete presence, when the constant chatter of thought subsides and you touch the silent awareness that is your essential nature. Many spiritual traditions offer practices to facilitate this recognition: meditation, prayer, contemplation, sacred movement. These can be valuable aids on your journey, but remember that they are means to an end, not the end itself. The goal is not to become good at techniques, but to awaken to the truth of your being that makes all techniques unnecessary. As you live from this awakened perspective, you will find that not only do fear and anxiety lose their grip on your consciousness, but all aspects of your life begin to flow with greater ease and grace. Relationships improve, creative solutions appear where once there were only problems, and you discover resources within yourself that you never knew existed. This transformation occurs not because you have learned to manipulate reality through mental techniques, but because you have aligned yourself with the creative flow that is reality's true nature. You have stepped out of your own way, allowing the infinite intelligence that sustains the universe to express itself through the unique form that is you. In this alignment, you discover that what you truly want and what life wants for you are the same thing. The desires that arise from your authentic self are not separate from the universal creative impulse, but expressions of it. When you act from this place of alignment, there is no strain or struggle, only the joy of creative participation in life's unfolding. Fear and anxiety arise from the illusion of separation, the belief that you are a fragmented entity in a world of hostile forces. When this illusion dissolves in the light of your true nature, what remains is a profound sense of connection with all that is. From this connection comes a trust in life that makes fear unnecessary and anxiety impossible. This trust is not naive optimism or blind faith. It is the clear recognition that the same intelligence that keeps your heart beating and the planets orbiting is guiding your life with flawless precision. Everything that happens is part of your awakening to this truth. Even the experiences that the separate self would judge as painful or unwanted. From the perspective of your divine self, there are no mistakes or accidents in your life, only opportunities for growth and awakening. The challenges that once triggered fear become doorways to deeper understanding. The relationships that once caused anxiety become mirrors reflecting aspects of yourself that seek integration and healing. This shift in perception, from seeing life as a threat to recognizing it as a teacher, is the essence of all spiritual growth. It is the journey from fear to love, from contraction to expansion, from the limited personality to the infinite I am. And this journey is not linear, but spiraling. You will revisit old patterns and triggered responses, but each time from a higher perspective with greater awareness. What once seemed like overwhelming fear may return as a gentle reminder to stay present. What once manifested as debilitating anxiety may reappear as an invitation to trust more deeply. The secret to living without fear and anxiety forever is to embrace this spiraling journey, not resisting the temporary reappearances of old patterns, but welcoming them as opportunities to apply your growing awareness. Each time you respond to fear with presence rather than resistance, you accelerate your awakening. Now let me address a practical concern that often arises. What about immediate instinctive fear responses? How can consciousness control those? It's true that the body has built in survival mechanisms that operate beneath the level of conscious thought. If you step into the street and see a car speeding toward you, your body will react instantly with a fear response that helps you jump to safety. This kind of instinctive response is part of the body's intelligence and serves an important purpose. I am not suggesting that you should try to override these natural survival mechanisms. Rather, I'm speaking about the psychological fears and anxieties that persist beyond their usefulness, that project themselves into an imagined future and create suffering in the present. These psychological fears, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of the unknown, these are the product of consciousness identified with limitation. And since they arise from consciousness, they can be transformed by consciousness. The instinctive fear that helps you avoid immediate physical danger will still operate when needed, but it will no longer extend into the chronic anxiety that dominates so many lives. In fact, when psychological fear and anxiety diminish, the body's natural intelligence functions more effectively. Your instincts become sharper, your intuition clearer, and your responses to real threats more appropriate. You neither overreact to minor challenges nor underreact to situations that require attention. This balance between appropriate response to real conditions and freedom from psychological fear is the hallmark of awakened living. It is not a superhuman state, but your natural condition when the accumulated tensions and conditioned responses of the separate self are allowed to unwind in the light of awareness. The unwinding happens naturally when you stop feeding the fear with your attention and belief. Fear, like any state of consciousness, requires your participation to sustain itself. When you withdraw your identification from fearful thoughts and emotions, they begin to lose their grip on your awareness. This doesn't mean suppressing or denying these thoughts and emotions when they arise. Suppression only drives them deeper into the unconscious, where they continue to operate beyond your awareness. Instead, you simply observe them without judgment, recognizing them as temporary movements in consciousness, not the truth of who you are. This practice of non-judgmental observation creates space around the fear, preventing it from consuming your identity. In this space, you discover that you are not the fear, but the awareness in which fear appears. This awareness, boundless, peaceful, and ever-present, is your true nature, untouched by the coming and going of emotional states. From this awareness, you can choose consciously which states of consciousness to embody. You are no longer at the mercy of habitual reactions, but can respond creatively to life's challenges from a place of centered presence. This is the freedom that awaits you on the other side of fear and anxiety. You might wonder whether this freedom means you will never experience fear or anxiety again. The truth is more nuanced. As long as you are having a human experience, the full range of human emotions will be available to you. But your relationship to these emotions changes fundamentally. Rather than being identified with fear when it arises, you recognize it as a movement in the field of your awareness. You can acknowledge its message. Perhaps it's alerting you to something that needs attention without being defined by it. In this way, fear becomes not an oppressive state that controls you, but simply information passing through your consciousness. This transformed relationship with fear is one of the most liberating aspects of spiritual awakening. You no longer need to fear fear itself. You no longer attempt to create a life where no fear arises, which is impossible as long as you are human. Instead, you develop the capacity to be with whatever arises in your experience with equanimity and presence. This capacity is developed through practice. Each time you meet fear with conscious awareness, rather than resistance or identification, you strengthen this muscle of presence. Over time, what once seemed overwhelming becomes manageable, and what seemed manageable becomes an opportunity for deeper awakening. The mind heals itself not by eliminating all challenging emotions, but by expanding to include them within a larger field of awareness. This expansion is your birthright as a conscious being. It is the natural movement of consciousness from limitation toward wholeness, from fragmentation toward integration. This healing happens most readily when you create the conditions for it through regular periods of quiet presence. Whether you call it meditation, prayer, or simply being, the practice of resting as awareness accelerates the mind's natural movement toward wholeness. In these quiet moments, you temporarily step out of the stream of doing and into the state of being. You let go of all efforts to change or improve yourself and simply rest in the recognition of what you already are. From this resting, a natural realignment occurs. The scattered energies of the mind gather themselves around the center of pure awareness. And wholeness emerges not as an achievement, but as a revelation. This revelation of wholeness is available to you right now, in this very moment. It requires no special circumstances, no perfect understanding, no completed self-improvement project. It requires only your willingness to be present with what is, to recognize the awareness that is rating these words as your essential nature, and to allow everything else, all thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions, to arise and pass within this awareness without defining it. In this simple recognition lies the key to freedom from fear and anxiety forever. Not because these states will never rise in your experience, but because you will no longer be confined or distant. You will know yourself as the vast, unchanging awareness in which all states arise and pass, like clouds moving through the clear sky of your being. From this knowing, you live with a deep trust in life that makes anxiety unnecessary. You recognize that the same intelligence that coordinates trillions of cells in your body, that keeps the stars in their courses, is orchestrating the unfolding of your life with flawless precision. Every experience, pleasant or painful, is part of this perfect unfolding, guiding you toward the full expression of your divine nature. This trust does not make you passive or fatalistic. On the contrary, it empowers you to participate consciously in life's creative process. From the state of trust, your actions arise not from fear or compulsion, but from inspiration and love. You no longer need to force outcomes through willpower or manipulation, but can allow your authentic desires to manifest through alignment with the universal creative flow. In this alignment, you discover that life supports you in ways you could not have imagined from the perspective of fear. Doors open up were invisible from the limited viewpoint of the separate self. Resources appear precisely when needed. Synchronicities abound, confirming that you are never alone, but always held in the intelligent embrace of the universe. This supportive presence becomes increasingly tangible as you learn to trust it. The more you relax into the knowledge that life is for you, not against you, the more evidence of this truth appears in your experience. It becomes a self-reinforcing cycle of trust and confirmation, gradually replacing the old cycle of fear and self-fulfilling negative expectation. The secret to living without fear and anxiety forever is to establish yourself in this new cycle, this new pattern of consciousness. You do this not through heroic effort, but through moment-by-moment choice to align with your true nature rather than with the conditioned patterns of the separate self. Each time you choose peace over fear, trust over anxiety, presence over avoidance, you strengthen the neural pathways of awakened consciousness. What begins as a deliberate choice gradually becomes your default state, your natural way of being in the world. This transformation is both the most natural thing in the world, simply returning to your true state, and the most profound achievement of a human life. It is the journey for which you were born, the purpose behind all your experiences, the destination toward which all paths ultimately lead. The mind can heal itself because at its core, the mind is already whole. What we call healing is simply the removal of the obstacles to the recognition of this wholeness. These obstacles, primarily the identification with the separate, limited self and the fears that arise from this identification, dissolve in the light of conscious awareness. This dissolution is not something you do, but something you allow. It happens naturally when you stop reinforcing the illusion of separation through your attention and belief. When you withdraw your investment in fearful thoughts and stories, they begin to lose their apparent reality. What remains is the clear recognition of your true nature as boundless awareness in which all experiences arise and pass without leaving a trace. From this recognition, fear and anxiety become increasingly foreign to your experience. They may still appear as movements in consciousness, but they no longer define or confine you. You remain centered in the peace that is your essential nature, regardless of the changing conditions of your life. This is the freedom I offer you tonight, not freedom from the full range of human experience, but freedom from identification with any part of that experience as the truth of who you are. It is the freedom to be fully human, while knowing yourself as the divine awareness in which humanity appears. This freedom is your birthright. It is what you are beneath all appearances. And it is available to you now in this very moment, through the simple recognition of your true nature as the awareness in which all things arise and pass away. The secret to living without fear and anxiety forever is to live from this recognition, not as an intellectual concept, but as your moment-to-moment experience. It is to know yourself as the peace you seek, the wholeness you desire, the freedom you long for. It is to recognize that what you are looking for is what is looking. In this recognition, the search ends and true living begins. Living not from the limited perspective of a separate self struggling against the threatening world, but from the unlimited awareness that is the source and substance of all that is. From this living, fear and anxiety naturally fall away, revealed as the transient appearances they always were, leaving only the peace that passes all understanding, the peace that is your true nature and your eternal home.